there's a special UN session on the future of the Western Sahara. It's a territory disputed between Morocco and Algeria. The UN Security Council has voted to extend the mandate of the UN mission for the referendum in Western Sahara, that's known as MINURSO, for another year. They're calling on the parties to resume negotiations to achieve a just and lasting and mutually acceptable solution for the region. Now, Emmanuel Macron, on his visit to Morocco, where he met with King Mohammed VI, pledged French support for, and he called it, Moroccan sovereignty in the Western Sahara.
After a speech asking the Moroccan government to do more to stem the tide of illegal immigration into France, the French president gave Moroccan lawmakers something to cheer about. France publicly took a stance on the future of Western Sahara.
For France, the present and future of this territory fall within the framework of Moroccan sovereignty.
France now joins other nations, including Spain, the United States, and Israel, in backing Morocco's control over the contested area.
The translation of this principle into concrete images was to update the maps. This has been done an hour ago.
Indeed, on the website of the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the map of Morocco now includes Western Sahara and the following text.
For France, the present and the future of the Sahara lie within the framework of Moroccan sovereignty. The autonomy plan proposed by Morocco in 2007 constitutes the only basis for achieving a just, lasting and negotiated political solution, in accordance with the resolutions of the United Nations Security Council.
The territory of Western Sahara has been a center of conflict for 50 years between Morocco, which has sent hundreds of thousands of settlers into the area, and the indigenous Sahrawi independence fighters of the Polisario Front, which are supported by Algeria. France's backing of Morocco's territorial claim has angered Algeria, which responded by withdrawing its ambassador to Paris. Nonetheless, French recognition of Moroccan control has a strong economic draw. On Tuesday, Macron pledged an unspecified sum of investments and sustainable support initiatives to benefit local populations in Western Sahara, and a French cultural institute is due to open in Dakhla. Several French companies have also signed agreements to produce green energy and e-fuels in its vast expanses of sun-drenched land.
That's the scene. Let's get the analysis. William Lawrence joins us, Professor of Political Science at the American University. William Lawrence, thank you for joining us here in France 24. We always appreciate your time and your expert knowledge on the area we're speaking about. Has Emmanuel Macron made an error in endorsing Morocco's claim and thereby snubbing Algeria?
He hasn't made an error vis-a-vis France's overriding interest of having a strong relationship with Morocco, and we can get into some of the aspects of that. But he's made an error vis-a-vis Algeria, no question. I mean, Macron is doing this because of the huge business upside for Morocco to fix the crisis that had been going on with Morocco since 2020, which was making a lot of the existing cooperation, including all the trade and investments, not work properly. You know, there's the migration issues, the security cooperation issues, and all of those have an upside with Macron doing what he's doing. But as you know, there's a sort of a zero-sum problem in North Africa when it comes to Western Sahara. And by making the crisis with Algeria worse, which can even affect energy supplies in Europe in the context of the Ukraine war and all of that, pushing away the Algerians creates its own set of problems. So France has gone from a balancing act, which was leading to sort of problems with both sides, to not a balancing act, choosing a side, going with Morocco, and sort of devil be damned on the Algerian side of the equation, which will have consequences.
Indeed, Algeria has undoubted resources in reserve there. Obviously, oil, massive amounts there, perhaps yet to be tapped into. Morocco, on the other hand, forging ahead, creating massive fields of solar panels to create electricity which can be exported. Both countries have a big case economically going forward, don't they?
Absolutely. I mean, Morocco's linked to the European energy grid now, that huge Desert Tech project and other renewable energy projects. I was the NATO project director for several years of a wind hydrogen project in Morocco, which is cutting edge. I mean, in renewables, Morocco is leading the way, and Algeria is actually not too happy about that either. But, you know, Morocco put huge investments in this. The investments in renewables, for example, were an environmental positive, but a financial negative. They were more expensive than what they were yielding. And Morocco makes big sacrifices economically and otherwise because of its Western Sahara policies, which is so much of a focus of its foreign policy. As you know, the king famously said, we see the whole world through the prism of Western Sahara, which is true, but it has an upside and a downside. You know, whereas Algeria has lots of resources too, human resources, energy resources, interest in trade, interest in rapprochement with Europe. And they're getting pushed away these days, which has its own consequences, pushed more towards Russia, towards China. They're trying to have strengthen ties with Egypt and Libya and Sudan as sort of a counterbalance to what Morocco's doing. And that has geopolitical consequences, which are unforeseen, you know, in creating more friction between Algeria and its neighbors to the north.
What is it that they want about Western Sahara? I mean, clearly there's the issue of pride and a national sense of belonging, I suppose, but is there something else under the ground that they're after?
Well, under the ground is a loaded question. There's a lot under the ground, but there's minerals and oil, you know, energy resources and lots of other things. But, you know, I've been writing and studying this issue for nearly 40 years. And I think, you know, each side tends to instrumentalize the interests of the other. You know, one side says it's our political and our cultural heritage, and the other side is just interested in economic benefits. And increasingly in the last 15 years, which I've also published on, they're framing it in religious terms. So Morocco says, you know, it's our sacred duty to defend this. And the Algerians are saying, you know, national liberation, like for the Palestinians, is a sacred duty for us too. And it's preached in the mosques. And in the end, each side, I think, and the world community has to take the other side's views more seriously. You know, self-determination for Sahrawis is really, really important. And Morocco's views that its kingdom was broken up in the Middle Ages by, or after the Middle Ages by the European powers is a viable argument too. And ultimately, you know, my rubric for all of this, you know, whether analyzing domestic politics or Western Sahara, is what's the best benefit for the population? And we have not yet seen a best benefit yet for the Western Sahara population, a lot of which is still in exile in camps in southern Algeria and not agreeing to what's going on. And, you know, when those tens of thousands of people can go home, we will have accomplished something. And right now, they don't want to go home because what has been set up for them in Western Sahara is not independence, which is what they've been fighting for so many years, but it's Moroccan sovereignty, a sovereignty which can be heavy-handed at times. And that's what the Sahrawi people are afraid of. You know, they often say, we have no problems with Morocco or its government. We just don't like their mukhabarat, you know, they're tough guys, you know, that make life tough for us down here. So, you know, I've been saying for decades, you know, as the region democratizes and as human rights are a higher concern, this problem resolves itself. And instead, we're having backsliding, you know, all around. And until those, you know, human rights and human dignity issues gets resolved, something the U.S. should be caring about more in the world, too, we'll have more peace and security in the region and a future that people can sign up to rather than be told to sign up to.
William Lawrence, as always, thank you for joining us and shedding light on what is a very fraught story. And of course, we'll come back to it at a later date. Thank you once again, William Lawrence, Professor of Political Science, excuse me, at the American University, joining us there from Washington, D.C. Time for business.